All right, so today I wanted to make a video on this tweet I seen from Joe Burnett on Twitter. So this is a chart, or basically a list, of the median US home price priced in Bitcoin. And as you can clearly see, the number over time is consistently going down. In fact, it's going down very, very significantly. I mean, in 2012, it was 50,616. In 2022, it was 20. 2024, it's 8. So the point here is very clear that anything and everything, when compared to Bitcoin, will trend to zero. I don't think everything will go to zero, but everything against Bitcoin is going to lose value over time. And it's only a matter of time until more and more people figure this out. There's a lot of people out there that are still skeptical for whatever reason, and it really just boggles my mind because, I mean, number one, we just got ETFs, like we just got them. There still is very little institutional adoption. There's very little, pension fund adoption, endowments, corporations. I mean, you in the S&P 500, you can count on one hand the amount of companies that own Bitcoin. I mean, look at what percentage of billionaires and millionaires, like it's still in the single digits. So we still have a ton of room to run here, right? A lot of people think that they've missed the boat, and my response to that is that if anything, the exact opposite is true. And another thing that people, I don't think they're coming to grips with and don't understand, is that about 19 million of the 21 million Bitcoins to ever exist already exist. And this is another thing that I think it should be easy for the average person to understand. The price of Bitcoin will double just as long as the demand stays as steady as it is right now. Right as we speak, the price will double every 4 years as long as the demand stays exactly where it is right now. The price of an asset doubling every 4 years is roughly that's rule of 72. 72 divided by 4, you're looking at about 18% compounded annual growth. That's what, double the S&P? You're telling me that the base case for this asset doubling the market, like that's the base case, and you're still not interested? Like it just boggles my mind that so many people haven't figured this out. But that's where the opportunity comes from. That's where the opportunity comes from. The fact that so many people still haven't figured this out. And the reason that I'm so bullish, and why you should be so bullish, is eventually people are going to have to choose between making money and not making money. Right? If you're someone who's struggling to get by, or you want to retire early, or maybe you're already fairly wealthy and you want to become even more wealthy, at some point, people are going to be like, hey, my options are lose or win. Eventually, people are going to be like, yeah, I'm tired of losing. Now, again, to be fair, I genuinely believe that the majority of the population will refuse to admit they're wrong, in which case they'll just continue with the poor habits. But when you only have maybe 1 or 2% of people, 1 or 2% of corporations, 1 or 2% of pension funds, like that number probably gets up to, I'd say, 30, 40, 50%. Once that happens, then I will start to consider the bear cases. But until then, there is no reason to be bearish. Like there is absolutely no reason to be bearish. And I mean, a big problem that the average person faces right now, the average Joe, is inflation. And another thing that I think people in North America, it's very hard for them to understand, is even though we have a lot of issues here, like I mean, our inflation is very, very concerning. Like it's very, especially in Canada, right? I mean, look at the the median Canadian home price is up like 3x in the last decade. And we are one of the better countries in the world. Like we are probably one of the top 10th or even for sure 20th percentile countries in the world. And yet our inflation is still, in a lot of ways, out of control. So this is something that's really hard for people to understand, that if you look at the majority of countries in the world, they have it a hell of a lot worse than us. So they have even more of an incentive to get in than we do. So that is the point that I am trying to make here, right? Every single spare dollar you have, you should be saving in some way, shape, or form, and a growing percentage of that should be dedicated to Bitcoin. And again, another debate that you'll hear is, oh, what about Ethereum? What about this altcoin, that altcoin? And again, the data is pretty clear on that as well, in that there isn't an altcoin in existence that can even be in the same room as Bitcoin, let alone people should be realistically considering. If there's a coin that can outperform Bitcoin over, let's say, a 10-year period, then maybe I'll consider the debate. I don't care about some 500% pump because all the Reddit bros pumped it, and the majority of people still probably didn't even make any money. I could care less about that. That's glorified gambling. My goal, my philosophy is to change the world, not some glorified casino. Right? So save that garbage. If that's the mentality you have, I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to talk to you. Because the goal is to change the world, not some glorified casino. So again, that's what I wanted to bring up here. But again, I'd love to hear other people's comments, questions, concerns, whatever you want to call it. But again, the point here remains in that if you are not storing at least a small, I'm not saying go crazy, I'm not saying put 50% or 90% of your net worth in Bitcoin. I'm not saying that. I've never said that. But I think that it's going to be a normal thing a decade from now, 2 decades from now, for 5, 10, maybe even 20%. It could be higher. It wouldn't surprise me. But I would say minimum 5%, just like right off the bat, you put into Bitcoin. Whether it's pension funds, whether it's financial advisors for their clients, whether it's endowments, whether it's corporations, like that's just going to be a normal thing that people do, corporations do, without even thinking about it. The real debate is going to be the number, right? Like right now, it's should you what's the gold standard? Is it 60-40 bonds and stocks? Is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Like that debate, I think that there's going to be a number in there being 60-30-10. I think that if anything, bonds are going to go down because, bonds have performed horrible over the last 5 years. And I think that if anything, that's going to be a sign of things to come. It won't be as bad as the last few years or so. I don't think that long term, but I think that we had a massive bull run in bonds for 30 or 40 years or whatever it was. I think that those days are over. Not that I necessarily lose money, but if you're going to get your guaranteed 1 or 2%, again, eventually people are going to be like, hey, this is not worth it. Not to mention, too, the likelihood of governments defaulting. For fuck's sakes. The likelihood of government, the likelihood of governments defaulting is going to go up as well. So that's another thing to be very concerned about. I think that if anything, we'll be at like a 50, 20, 25. I don't know what the standard thing is going to be, but something that I think will come into existence is that the allocation to Bitcoin, that'll be a standard thing. Because again, look at this chart or this list. This is going to continue. This number could be close to 1, or I think it'll get between 1 or 2, for sure 3, within the next year or two. Because, median U.S. home price is what? 400,000. I have no idea what it is off the top of my head. Let's say it's 300,000, 400,000. I think Bitcoin gets to 200, maybe 300,000 this next bull run here. That's between 1 and 2 Bitcoins. And then by the next halving, it'll be well below 1. It might be a half a Bitcoin. So you give it a decade, this number is going to be, not only is it going to be less than 1, it's going to be 0.1, 0.2, for sure less than 0.5. And it's like I brought up already, eventually, like one thing that I've said time and time again is you very rarely will go wrong by underestimating the ignorance of the average person, right? You very, very, very rarely will go wrong because the ignorance of the average person is pretty astounding. Like, it's pretty hard to underestimate how ignorant the average person is. But eventually, again, people are going to have to decide between admitting they're wrong and not being poor, or at the very least being way more wealthy than they are, and not admitting they're wrong and being poor. Eventually, a significant percentage of people, I still think it's probably a minority, but it's enough people that this trend will continue. Now again, eventually we will get diminishing returns. But my prediction long term, I think over the next, like I say, the base case is Bitcoin returns 18% per year. That's simply if the demand stays constant. I think that over the next decade, that's probably between double to triple. I mean, it's still up over 1,000% over the last 5 years, right? So I think that my base case over the next 5 years, 50% per year probably. The next 5 after that, maybe 30, 40. And then eventually I think we get to the point where it's just a consistent, 15, 20% return per year. And again, eventually people are going to be like, hey, my options are invest in this thing that's returned 20% per year on average for decades, or get 8% per year in stocks, or get 2 or 3% per year in bonds. Eventually people are going to figure that out. And given where we are right now, 99% of the population still hasn't figured that out. 99% of financial advisors still haven't figured that out. 99% of corporations still haven't figured that out. Eventually, 20, 30, 40, 50% of people will figure that out. So anyway, I could talk forever about this, but I'm going to leave it there. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned for more.